to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. If there's one thing I love to talk about, it's the client experience. Over the years at WindowWorks, we have worked very hard to refine the experience for our clients, to add the little touches that take a one-time customer and turn them into a loyal client for life. But when my guest today talks about upping the client experience, she's talking about so much more than a few little touches. Today, we're going to talk with Katie McFarlan of Dakota Design Company, a firm that helps you and wedding planners, so that's interior designers and wedding planners, elevate your client experiences, not just through the little things, but through a well-designed business of smooth processes and systems that make the entire customer journey seamless. As a former wedding planner, Katie understands that luxury service providers have to provide a solid experience for their customers. She also knows what it takes to get behind-the-scenes operations in place in order to do that. Katie helps luxury interior designers and wedding planners like you who are buried in the business operations and help you get back down to doing the creative work that you love. She creates and improves your processes and sets up systems so you can streamline your workload, move your business forward, and free up your time to focus on the things that matter most. Now, before we get into today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to thank our show sponsor, Kravit, the industry leader in the to-the-trade home furnishings industry. Kravit just recently unveiled their newest collection, Barry Lance Canvas to Cloth. Check it out today and use coupon code AWDB10 to save 10% off any one purchase of Kravit fabric, wallpaper, or trim. All right, let's hear what Katie has to say about building a flawless client experience. Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, LuAnn. Thank you so much for having me. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here talking to you.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to our conversation as well. I love talking about the client experience, and this is your particular area of expertise, is helping not only interior designers, but wedding, event planners, and so forth. Creatives, I guess is what we would say, is upping their game in the area of client experience. First, tell me, why are you so passionate about the client experience? What is it about the client experience that you think translates to an interior designer's business? In what way? What's the ROI when we do a really good job of that?
Yeah, well, I think, as a luxury service provider, so, wedding planners and interior designers, they both make a promise kind of upfront, like, I'm going to make this thing really beautiful for you, and I'm going to take out all the middle work. But you have to trust me, and it's going to be a long process, and it's going to be stressful. So I think with that, your clients are placing so much trust in you right up front, and it's a big investment, whether it is their wedding day or their home. It's a big investment for them. And so I think having a really well laid out client experience helps them to have a really good experience with you when they could be otherwise a little bit nervous, right? So every time there's a new delay or a new charge or whatever, if you have already kind of set that expectation, like, hey, this is what's going to happen, I'm going to be there with you every step of the way, it allows them to just kind of enjoy it rather than be terrified the entire time. So I think having the client experience nailed down is so key for businesses that have a long deliverable or long lead time for delivering their final service. And so that's why I always love to start there.
That's, you know what, that's a brilliant analogy there, Katie, when you think about it is, some of the things I think what you did is you hit on some emotional language that both when you are planning your wedding, as you said, and or a big renovation or a redesign to your home or a room, it is a big trust factor. And it's like, on for a wedding, it's okay. Either everything this person said happened or it didn't, but there's no, well, let's just do a redo. And the same thing with a big design project. You just don't say, wow, that's what the whole room looks like together, but I don't really love it. Take it back.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and in both cases, your clients typically have never hired someone like you before.
Right.
And so, what I see for a lot of my design clients, like the end consumer, is they've like kind of saved up, right? They've done some little things
Mm.
here and there, but now they're getting to a place where they're like, I want to redo the whole house or the whole first floor or the entire rooms, like, top to bottom, and they've never done it before. They've kind of pieced it together. So they oftentimes don't know what it costs. They don't know how long it takes. They don't know that like there could be these delays and that there's going to be all this communication happening in the middle ground. And so I just think it's so important to have, again, set up this client experience, this process that's client facing, that helps guide them through so they see, oh, you're doing all of that. Okay, I see. Like, oh wow, that I get that too, and you're going to do that. I see, right? So the ROI is not just it benefits your clients, but it also shows just how much your company is doing for them, and then that speaks to the value and how you're charging what you charge.
Mm. And I love this angle because you see, we all know with the advent of the internet and all of the things, I mean, how many different people think that, decorating or designing a room is just sitting on the internet and ordering individual items. But, the whole magic comes in understanding the scale and the blending of patterns and textures and all of the things. And so it's easily taken for granted how much time goes into what an interior designer does. And so what you're saying is when you deliver a good and exceptional client experience, you're somehow pulling back the curtain on that so that the client is 100% certain of understanding everything that you're actually doing for them.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, because again, they don't know. Like
Right.
they don't know if they need to be doing something or if you're going to be doing it because again, they've just never had that happen for them. They've never had someone come into their home and measure their windows and their trim and their floor vents. They've never had someone select like 30 different fabrics to find the perfect one. Like they've just gone to like Crate and Barrel or Pottery Barn and picked stuff off a shelf. So they just have no idea. So yeah, so I think it just speaks to like all that goes into it. And when you can do that and share that with the client now in a way that's not overwhelming, like I've definitely worked with some clients where they've come to the table and they're like, well, this is what we're doing right now for our client experience. And I'm like, okay, I understand this industry and I don't understand what you're showing me. Like
Mm.
what is this? It's all like, not even like there's that much jargon, but it's all very much like FF&E and like procurement and like all these different things. I'm like, let's just not say any of that. Like, what does the client want? They want to know who's doing like their shopping and their ordering. They want to know who's getting their furniture, right? So we just like I try to help my clients to simplify it so it's easy for their clients to understand that, hey, this is the process and we just moved out of phase one, so now we're into phase two or phase three or phase four, and it's very easy for them to kind of see the project moving along, even though especially right now like things are still just sitting, but they can see that. And now because they know that this is the process, they also are seeing, well, I don't need to reach out to them because I can see we just went through phase three, so now we're on to phase four, so like they'll send me an update. So it
Mm.
really also internally for the company, it kind of cuts down on some of that, the email back and forth with clients and the phone calls and the messages and the requests for updates and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And so what is it that your firm does specifically, Katie? Is your firm, so I've got to have a process in place and then maybe you help me translate it into a client facing process that feels good, looks good, smells good, tastes good? Or if I don't have a process in place, right? Because there's two different things. I can have a process, but maybe I don't have such a client facing process where I look, any process faces the client because they go through it. But there's a way, for instance, internally, I might have my team check on statuses every week, but maybe I don't have that external process of here's your Friday email, here's where everything is. So where are you? Are you, oh, hey, you need that internal process and this is how you define it externally? Or no, they have to come to me with that internal process and then I help them identify the touch points and in ways to deliver it to the client?
Yep. So that's a great question. So I always say you have a process whether you think you do or you don't, right? So a lot of my clients will say, well, we just kind of are winging it, or we don't really have a process, but this is what we go through. I'm like, okay, well, that's your process. So let's now go through that and look at each phase. And like one of the questions I ask on my intake is, where are you getting your objections, right? At what part of the process? Is it an inquiry? Is it like during the ordering? Is it at presentation? And then, okay, now I know, hey, whatever you're doing at that phase, we need to give more information. We need to send more emails about what they should be expecting and educate them, right? I mean, really, this is what it is it's a way to educate your clients in a way that is still really, really exciting for them to be working with you, right? Like, wow, this company is so like legitimate and so professional. They've got it covered. Like, and just that right there, you just have so much confidence in your designer or your wedding person that you're like, you've got it. I'm going to let you handle it. Right. So essentially my clients will, if they don't have a process, then yes, we go through and we look at, okay, well, what are you currently doing, right? On the back end, what are you currently doing? And what are you giving to your clients? And sometimes I'm not giving anything to my clients. We have a phone call. I send them the proposal, they sign it, and then we go and meet and we start doing X, Y, or Z. And so then what I do and my team does is we then come in and we formalize that. So we say, okay, so at this step, what can we create that's going to make it easier for you, the designer, to share what you do with your prospects in a way that your prospects have instant trust in you, because of the way you've laid this out, right? It's a beautiful doc. I mean, I know it's like as silly as like a document, but it really is. It's like, here's this document and this, investment guide that kind of goes through, this is the process. This is what you can expect when working with us. Here's some FAQs we often get. Here's what you could expect to spend. So it does a lot of like that vetting for you. And so for me, we come in and we just kind of formalize each thing. So if you only have your back end process defined, that's great. But I find that most don't, right? They have their process, they know what they've been doing, but they're also coming to me because they're really overwhelmed. So something's not working, or there's a glitch somewhere along the way. So we always start with the client experience, because that's the funnel, right? That's the first thing coming into your business. So if people are coming in and there's no rules and no structure around what time they can call you or can they text you, well, of course you're going to continue to feel overwhelmed, because now you have more clients coming into your business who are like, there's no rules here. I love this, right? I can ask for 100 reselections and, oh, can't we just go shopping together? Like, but if you set it up front, we don't do that. We don't text. Then they come in and they're like, hey, is it okay if I like message you about this here? Right? Like, they're just so much more mindful because they know you're like, this is a real business. This isn't like my neighbor who's helping me pick out pillows.
Right. Well, I find that is, to me, the number one reason why I would myself or anybody that I'm talking with encourage to, like you said, formalize the process, because I say it all the time. As a consumer, I want to know that you know each step and what the next step is. I don't want to feel like you're winging it,
100%. And even the other part of that is, as a consumer, I don't want to feel like the bad guy having to ask you a question about my project, my home, when I'm paying you and I trusted you, right? Like, if I have to come to you and say, hey, how much longer till I get my design? I feel bad. And I don't want to feel bad when working with you, right? I want to feel really good the whole time, because that good feeling, it goes to everything. It goes to the purchases your client makes. It goes to the review you get. It goes to them giving you a little bit more grace when you do make a mistake. It's because they feel like you kind of partnered on this project together. So I think the more information you can give and the more boundaries you can set, and up front, it's letting your clients like just be the good guy, right? They already know they'll get their design in, 8 weeks or whatever, and they'll get their order updates every other Friday, and they'll get this will happen in their house on this day. So they're not asking, you're just staying right in front of it for them.
So tell me a little bit about what is the process like when you get knee deep into a designer's business. So I'm, first of all, are there would you say there is a majority of the businesses that you work with are solo 1 and 2 employees, or they're firms of 6 and 8 and 10? Is there any consistency there, or is it all over the place? Any designer at any level in business could take advantage and understand that there's always a way to improve the client experience.
Yeah, so I think and I've looked at this before, is like, what are the similarities of my clients? So I think the first thing is like they have a tried and true service. So they're very skilled, and they might be a solo. They might have a team of 1 or 2, or they might have a team. I have one client who has like 10 or more people on her team. So it honestly, it varies. And I would say, income level ranges from maybe 150,000 to multiple millions. So again, there's this wide, gamut of where they are. Some of them are newer and some of them are more established. So what I find though is the common thread is that they have a service that they've sold. They're not new. So if they are new, they've had a ton of they've sold a lot of services, right? So, and I had one designer who I started working with last year, and she's like, I just want to make sure it's not a fluke. And like it just feels like I just took off and it feels crazy, but I want to make sure I fill in all my gaps and like it's not a fluke, right? So, and it was not a fluke. Like she continued to grow and grow, and now she has a team she brought 3 people on to work with her. So I would say that they have a service, they've been doing it long enough, because again, I'm creating the client experience based on their service. So sometimes we're creating 2 processes or 3 processes, right? So like I have a designer who does whole home. She does the whole home. They come in for new construction. They select every single thing, and then they move over into their furnishing phase, and they sell that all as one package. So she has that service. So that's one process, right? So if I'm sending something out to the client, this is our design build process. This is what we go through. This is how long each phase takes. Here's what you can expect. But then she also takes on a couple small furnishing projects a year. So that's a very different process and client facing process than her full design build that's going to take a year or more. So those are 2 separate things that we create, right? And then also front end, right? So on the front end, there's different things, and on the back end, there's different things that happen.
So when you think about whether it's the smaller project or the larger design build process, when you sit down with someone and they explain to you their business and their process and so forth, when you talk about improving that client experience, we're not talking about, okay, every 3rd Tuesday, send them flowers.
No,
Okay.
no. So
Right.
we'll definitely identify what are some good opportunities and when are the good times to send out gifts to clients, and what are some good like welcome gifts, what are some good closing gifts, things like that. And then also just who are your ideal clients and what are they expecting, right? So if I have a client whose ideal clients are young parents with little kids, that's a different expectation than somebody who's retired and they're only doing second homes of retirees, right? So those groups have different expectations, right? And so I wouldn't necessarily treat them both the same way, right? Like the young family is not going to really care so much about some like luxury dinner or like luxury experience as a gift, but this retired couple might, where, you know what I mean? So we really specifically look at that, right? So like, what are some gifts we could get for this family that are gonna like serve the whole family? And again, just speak to you as being, just a great designer to work with, and you just get them, right? Because now you're giving them something that their whole family can enjoy.
Mm-hmm. So, but what else goes into it? In other words, I'm getting the impression that is nice and that is part of it, but that is the icing on the client experience. That what you're talking about and what you work with designers to do is to create, I want to say, more concrete deliverables in the experience than just gifting and the pretty and the niceties.
Oh yeah. Yes, 100%. So typically I kind of break it down into, 4 different phases, I would say. So we've got the inquiry phase, right? So that's where they've never worked with you before and they're starting to learn about your company. They want to work with you. From there, then we have the onboarding phase. And so that is when like they've signed a proposal, they've paid a deposit or a retainer, and now they're like being welcomed into your company. Then from there, we can break the deliverable phase into obviously a lot of phases. That's where it's really specific to the designer is, how many phases do you have? I have some designers who do a concept and then a final design. I have some designers who do just a final design, right? So that is going to be really dependent on the design firm. Mm-hmm. And then we've got the deliverable. And then, within that, we've also got procurement, project management. And then at the end there, we've got offboarding. So I look at it as we've got the inquiry phase deliverables. We have the onboarding phase deliverables. We have the delivery or the fulfillment deliverables, and then we have the offboarding. So for each of those phases, we create the materials that would need to go out at that stage of the process. And so then, we create those for our clients and then they review them, make sure everything is right. Because I've had clients who come to me and they're like, this is my process. And it's, it's a 1-page Word document. They're like, this is my process. And I'm like, boom, here's, 50 pages of here's a 10-page investment guide. Here's a 12-page welcome packet to send out. Here's some what to expect guides you can send out. And here's a closing resource binder for them. And they're just like, wait, what? Where did this come from? But again, I like to say I'm a professional consumer. My husband and I hire designers. We hire professionals for projects, right? We understand what it's like to be on the consumer side. So I know what I would want every phase of the project, right? So I just incorporate that into each of those phases. So yeah, they get those deliverables, right? So we kind of map that out. We write out the emails that go out at each phase. And then from there, then they are able to use those. A lot of my clients will just plug them into Gmail as templates. So when they're sending out a proposal, they just go into their dropdown, they grab the proposal email template and attach their proposal or link their proposal and send it out to a client. It makes it really easy and streamlined.
Okay, so here's what's happening is you are not necessarily imposing a process or a system on any one business. You're taking the existing processes and systems, whether they are formalized or that I do it this way. And then you're like, but you do it that way every time. And maybe if we just give it a little bit more structure, you can be assured you'll do it that way every time as opposed to missing a step. But the point is, whatever individual process any firm would have, you're analyzing it and saying, how do we announce that phase or describe or explain or give collateral information to that phase to the consumer so the consumer feels informed and cared for? Am I picking this up?
Yes. So I'm not saying this is my 30-step process and I'm going to make you do this. Right. I say because of course what I find with business owners is they got to where they are by doing things a certain way. And just like anyone in life, you can't just change someone overnight. And so I'm already changing things a lot by creating these deliverables for them to use. And I'm taking it based on how they do business. And the other piece I always look at is, well, what are your big goals, right? So in 5 years, in 10 years, or whenever, what are your big goals for your business? If I could wave my magic wand over the back end of your business, what would happen? What would that do for you? So when I'm putting all these pieces together, that's always in mind is okay, so you want to have, X, Y, or Z. Okay, well then we're going to stop doing this service at $150. I would recommend to you, we don't do that anymore because that doesn't make sense for you if you want to hit $1 million. Do you know what I mean? So we always are considering those big picture goals in there. But yes, I take their process. I can make recommendations, of course, of well, hold on, why are you doing that at that point? I had one client who sends out before she even gets on the phone with somebody, 100 questionnaire. And I'm just I don't know if that's a good idea because I might just be in the research phase. I've maybe never hired anybody. And now I have 3 little kids and now you want me to fill out 100 questions and send you pictures? I'll just going to try to find someone else because I don't even know if I'm going to want to work with you. Right. So that's where I'll come in and I'll say, let's just change this to like 5 questions. And then if you need more questions after you get their inquiry, before you book a call with them, ask them to send you some pictures.
Hmm.
But don't like, just for everyone's time. And who has, and then even on the back end, who has time to read all those
Well,
questions
that's the
before an
other
inquiry
thing.
call?
You just made a homework
Like,
project for yourself too.
exactly. And so like a lot of it is like, let's just make it like easy for, like I always say, like, let's just make it easy for your clients to work with you. And like, let's not do all like that, just makes it so hard. And if you have 100 questions you need to ask, great, but let's do that when they're getting onboarded, because they're going to be so excited. They
Yes.
are going to be like, when can I give you my information? I have to share these pictures with you. Give it to them then. And so with some clients, yes, I do say, hey, let's wait on getting that. Like, let's not deter clients, and let's get that after they're already clients, or once you're on the phone with them and you can see this is a good fit. I think we can really work with you. Why don't you send me some more pictures, or let me send you a couple more questions?
I love it because you're right. As a consumer, if I really am at that very, very beginning phase, that's too overwhelming. That's like,
Yeah.
I don't even, like you said, I don't even know. I haven't even heard your voice yet. I don't know if we're going to work together. I'm not investing that amount of time
Yep.
into this sort of a project. And by the way, if I were to, and basically I get into that first phone call with you, and because 100 questions is a lot for you to review, if I feel like you haven't read it and you're just asking me that while we're on the phone, then I'm actually going to be really ticked. It's like
Exactly.
I had to take 2 hours out of my life to do it, but you can do it on the fly. No thanks.
Exactly. Well,
Just
and even too, like if the consumer doesn't know, like, well, do you charge for a consult? Like, what if I don't even get anything out of this, right?
right,
Like, what if
right.
we talk for 10 minutes on the phone and then they say to me, okay, well, yeah, next step is we're going to book a $700 consultation, but you don't have that anywhere on your website. I didn't get a single email back from you after I submitted. So now, like, on the consumer side, I don't want to spend any more time if it's just not a good fit. So like,
Right.
I'm a huge proponent of like prices on your website, and or starting prices on your website, just again to vet those people out. And I know sometimes, prospects aren't looking at that. They see what they want to see, and they're still going to reach out even if your minimum is, $75,000. Like, they're still going to reach out. They just didn't see it. But it's just another opportunity for you to, again, not make them feel like the bad guy, because now they're on the phone with you and they're like, oh shoot, I can't afford that. Like, how do I get off this call? Like, I feel so uncomfortable.
Right.
Right.
Right. Exactly. So what happens now? So if you do when you were saying that you ask somebody what their goals are for their business, that almost seems like, this isn't just here's my objective ways that you can improve the client experience. That's a little bit more of an analyzation, right? You
Yep.
are saying, oh, well, why do you have this particular service on your website if you aspire to do this sort of volume of work? So that seems a little bit more like consulting or something there.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say that I'm a consultant and I also do some implementation. So I have some women who work with me who help with implementation for projects that I map out for my clients, or if my clients don't have a team or a designated person who can help with some of these projects. We always start with a client experience, like I was saying, because that tightens up those boundaries right away, right? It starts to give them a little bit more, they feel like they have more control, because we are now formalizing their process and kind of really, in a sense, legitimizing their business, especially for my solos, that it's just them. They're like, it's just me. Like, they feel like they're not a real business because it's just them all by themselves, right? And it can be very lonely when it is just you running your business. And so when we come in, we start there, and maybe they do have a great process already laid out and they just need a couple adjustments to it, and that's awesome. Like, in those instances, we can move really quickly through to the next phase of their project or whatever they're working on. And so, but we always start there. And so for me, I kind of promote that as my service, because I know that most designers are really overwhelmed with the client management. It's a lot. And this whole year with COVID has made it even more stressful. And the industry's in even more demand. And projects are just ongoing for even longer. So, like, you're with clients who should have finished last year.
Mm.
And it's like your price just goes down with every single email, right? So we always start there, but really, like, the bulk of my work is more consulting and implementation. So we really look at the back end of the business and say, okay, so typically we do like our kickoff call, and we kind of map out, okay, these are your goals. Here's where you're at right now in each of these different areas of your business. And then we kind of map out like, what do we need to do in each of these areas to get you closer to those goals? Like, we're not going to open a studio and have a team of 5 designers by the end of the next couple months, but we're going to be able to set you up slowly going through each of these like phases of your business to align you with that, right? So like I had a client who was like, Katie, like you make everything, like you've made my business feel so professional, and it's allowing me to see that, right? Because this was a person who, when she started with me, she was by herself, and she's like, you have like formalized my business for me. And because again, she's out there by herself doing it. And when you're by yourself, there's a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of, well, I guess I can go a little bit lower on this price because I really want this project, right? When you have somebody else who comes into your business, they're like, no, the price is the price.
Right.
And they remind you of that. Like I'll have clients who I'm like, okay, so you're going to do all these 100 steps in your process and you're only going to charge X. Okay. And you just brought on a team member and your prices aren't going up, right? So sometimes you just need somebody to like objectively look at your business and say, like look at what you're doing for your clients, like look at how game changing this is for them, right? So we really look comprehensively at everything. We start with the client experience, and then we typically go through the different parts of their business. So once we nail down the client facing side of the client experience, that then defines the back end, right? So now we know, okay, this is our inquiry process, this is what we're doing, here's all the things that we're doing on the back end to make those steps happen, right? So when you then write that out, you start to see, well, I'm the one who's been doing that, and I don't need to do that. I don't need to be sending that email out. I don't need to be the person to jump on that phone call. I don't need to be the person who's going and measuring. And you start to then see, oh, I could hire somebody, or I could have my assistant do that, right? So it makes it really clear how you can delegate and get some of those non-design related tasks off of your plate and leverage your team more. So we just kind of go through all the different, and it depends what their goals are, right? What we're going to be working on, but typically we work on, their services, their client experience. There's a little bit of website work in there, right? Because again, we want to make sure everything matches to what we're doing on the services and the client experience. And then we are typically setting up some systems on the back end. We're typically hiring a team. So we kind of go through all of those pieces. And again, it just depends how long we work together and how much they already have in place.
And how does that work? So is it no different than when an interior designer comes to a meeting with a potential client and it's, well, do you need one room or do you need 5 rooms? Do you need a whole house or do you need a knockdown and start over? Is it the same thing when a designer comes to you? It's like somebody might just need one part, somebody might need an entire overhaul, and you're literally in knee deep in all the different aspects of what goes into running the business well?
Yeah. So I would say, we usually I'll do like an inquiry call, and I can usually make an assessment of, based on what you're telling me, this is what I think, right? Like, this is what I think we would be able to do. And I think it would maybe be 2 months of working together or 6 months of working together. Now, again, once I actually get in there, it could be crazy. And I could see a lot of madness, and that might be longer. And I just do month to month with my clients. So they're not tied to working with me for any certain amount of time. And so if they are like, hey, I brought on a team member, now we can shorten some of these other projects or delegate them to them, so I don't need your team to help with that, then that's great. Right. So it really, like you said, it really depends like what they want to work on. And some clients I will move into more of just, I'm there kind of not like on staff because I'm a subcontractor, but where I'm doing just ongoing work with them, right? So I have one designer who's like, I'm always going to have you, like, you'll always stay with me because I'm always going to have new projects. So it's just like, how can I, because again, when you're the owner of the company and you're also working with clients, you have all these big ideas. And if you don't have someone on your team who you can take away from client stuff to put on these big projects, then sometimes those projects just sit there and they never come to life, right? And so a lot of times they'll say, well, I want to keep you on because you'll be the person who's going to push this thing forward for me.
And so what does that look like? So for a particular firm that you're always on retainer, what are some of the tasks that you are doing for a firm like that has you in their business every month?
Yeah. So it's very specific to the client and their company. So, we are totally revamping her whole hiring process. So she has a lot of subcontractors, and she has multiple like sides to her business. And so it's not just her design clients. She also has a warehouse. She also has a showroom. Like she has a lot of different parts to her business. And so right now the whole team management piece is really difficult because they're in different places. There's a lot of things to manage. So like with her, we're like kind of revamping and reorganizing the whole business of her team, right? Who do we need? What are they doing? And then from there, I know she wants to roll out an internship program. And so there's that component, right? And that's not going to happen overnight. And it takes a little bit of time to build that out, right? And then you test it and you start it and then you revise it. So that's just from this one particular designer. Other designers might have bigger picture projects of, redoing, like honestly, something like redoing their website and just facilitating that. Like, I want to do it, but I don't have time, or like going through a rebrand. I don't have time to do any of that. So then I would be the person who's like, okay, like, let me gather all the information and like, let me just start making progress on this. So I can then meet with, if we're going to hire a graphic designer or brand designer, I can meet with them. I can kind of line up all these pieces to where it's like, okay, here's what I would recommend. And like, if you're on board, like, I'll just get this going. So it's happening for them in the background.
Is it like an operations manager kind of, or that's not really the right description?
Yeah. So it kind of, again, it really kind of depends on the company and how they utilize me. So like I said, some clients will say I'm like their business coach, and I'm like, well, I'm not a business coach because of course I'm not certified in that. But I'm doing some of the implementation, right? So like some of the stuff that I'm setting up, I'm in there, like in the back end of their system, like reading all their stuff that they have and like reviewing things and creating things for them. Other times my team is setting stuff up for them. So, but yes, I have clients who call me their director of operations, their business manager. A lot of it is operations, right? Because again, I'm kind of seeing comprehensively all the different pieces of their business. And so like with one client right now, she's like, I just can't get it all together. And I'm like, it's because you don't have somebody underneath you to manage all the people. You're managing all the people, and no one knows who to go to except you. So you're constantly buried, and you're not making any money because you're spending your day managing people. So like, I come in as that person who comes between them, who's like, well, let's talk to Katie first. And Katie knows, so go to her. And then my goal is always to train someone at the company to be that person. So I don't need to be on with you forever. I mean, unless it's a great fit and that's what we want. But like, ideally, someone at your company is going to be that person, right? And again, just having like boots on the ground, so to speak. I know a lot of clients really like that. But also I have clients who really like that I'm remote, because then I can be the bad guy if needed. And like if Katie calls from, Never Neverland, like their clients like, okay, sure. Like we'll be better or whatever, so they don't have to put their front facing client or their front facing team into a position where now their client is going to be mad because so-and-so from their office called them and said, hey, you need to pay or we're not going to keep designing on your project. Like, that's me. I get to be that person. And for me, I'm totally fine with it because I'm like in a distance and I'm like, the price is the price. Like, right. If my designers are not getting paid, and I'm like, why are you still working? Why are you texting them back? Like, you need to stop, like send them to me. So it just really varies based on the company. It's very flexible. Like, I'm a mom with 3 kids. I like to be able to provide a flexible service to my clients. So it's very much like, what do they need and how can I support them? And if it's something that I can do, then I'm happy to do it or have somebody on my team do it. So I even have some clients who were with me for a while and we determined, hey, you guys are in a really good spot, but I know this piece of the business is still really hard for you. So I'm going to keep one of my girls who works with me. I'm going to give her to you and she's going to work for you and do this piece of the business for you. So now I still check in on her and I still train her and let her know when like things are coming down the pipeline that are different, or if the software she's using is like, oh, we need to learn this. So I'm still helping oversee that. But like, they now have this person who they're like, if you think she's good, Katie, yes, we'd love to have her. And so they don't have to think about that anymore. So again, it's very kind of just highly customized to the client.
Can you think of a situation where someone approached you to work with them, and it could be in the wedding planning industry or our industry, and you just said, that's not a right fit. That's not the type of client or project. Not, I don't mean personality wise, but the type of deliverable that somebody had an expectation of, that you were like, that's not me.
Yeah. So I would say I'm not a virtual assistant. So like I don't do like admin, I don't do like inbox email management, things like that. And even not necessarily like my team doesn't really do that either. We are doing more like if I'm mapping out a project for them, if I'm like, hey, let's build their client experience and let's do it like this, and this, and they'll go and start doing that, right? Or we will do some CRM stuff. I don't, but I have one of the women who works with me. She does like our client relationship management software stuff. So she'll go into the back end of their system and she'll create the stuff for them, plug in their emails, create, update their scheduler, things like that. So I would say I don't do like virtual assistant work. I don't really interface with like their consumers, right? So like sometimes I will, if it's like, even if it's just like an email. I have had to do phone calls with them where it's like an issue and it's like nobody wants to touch it. So I'm like, I'll deal with it. So I will do that sometimes. That's for clients who I've been with for a longer time, who I've been doing more with, right? So, but I would say no VA work, no like, I do some tech stuff, but like I'm not like the tech person. I always try to kind of say like that's IT, like that's not really me. Like I can try to figure it out, but that's not me. And then I would say, as far as like the type of client, it would be more someone who hasn't sold a service yet and doesn't necessarily know what they're doing, because I don't like, it doesn't make sense for you to work with me if you haven't sold something yet, because I could seriously come in and just create everything for you based on what I would recommend, but like that's not going to be your business, and
Right.
you might not be able to follow that.
Right.
So yeah, so I think, I do have a client who is very new to the business, to going on her own. She's been working for a company though for 6 months or something like that. So even with her, the work we do is very different. It in that sense, it is a little bit more like maybe coaching or just consulting without the implementation, because she's still trying to wrap her head around what how should I like, structure my services, and what do I need to look out for? But then I can come in and say, well, here's all the things you need to look out for, right? Because like I'm seeing it from designers who have been doing this for a long time or have a higher volume because they're a bigger team.
And so you said that you're not the tech person. One of the things that goes through my mind, I know that so many of the designers use My Doma Studio, but what I find is many of them, especially ones that have 2 or 3 people on their team, or even one person on their team, it's somebody has to stop the train and learn how to use it. And not only learn how to use it, but learn how to use it to its full capacity. You see, so often we'll take a software and it's like having an iPhone and you use it to just make a phone call, right? Well, there's 15,000 other things you can do with it. You can take a picture, you can send an email, you can search the internet, you can see the weather, like all the things. And so, but that's not what you would do either. That's not your thing, to come in and have one of your team members sit and have an onboard and really get a whole, get a firm all fully onboarded on something like My Doma Studio.
So, well, actually, no. Well, so I typically try to make sure my client has someone who is going to kind of facilitate like the accounting piece, right? Whether it's someone internally or they actually have a bookkeeper. And then I will work with their bookkeeper to make sure that we're doing everything that makes sense for how they are doing their bookkeeping. And so whether they are on My Doma or Ivy or whatever software, I like to collaborate with them. And then from there, I can share like different trainings and stuff like that. And I'm familiar with the software, so I can go in and be like, here, give me your login. I'll log in. I'll show you how to do it. But I like to give that to their like key employee who is going to then tell everybody else how to do it.
Right.
But also one of the things that we set up is a training library for our clients who have teams. And so in their system, they have a training library, and we invite their new employees or their subcontractors to that. So go to the team training library first, and we'll continue to fill that in with videos and trainings and things where it's like, hey, send me a quick Loom video of how to, I don't know, add terms and conditions to this document, right?
Mm.
So we would send a video, whether that's me or someone in their company, and we would add it to the team training library. So it's in there. So again, you're just building this resource of, training. So don't come to me until you look at the team training library.
Okay. And this team training library exists on your site, and you have access to it when you're a client of yours, or you're talking about if you knew that a client of yours needed training on this, you create the videos for them so that they have it, and that's part of a deliverable that you give to them.
Yep. So I would create that on their system. So most of my clients, they have like their product management software, right? So Ivy, Mydoma, whatever. And then they also have their project management software that's managing like all the pieces of the project, and also their team, and, some of the communication, and then just like office projects and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so within that project management software is where I would build that out. So it would be in their software, and it would be a combination of videos that I would record for them based on things they're asking me, and then I show their team, add videos in here, right? Because if you're doing it once, like, let's just leverage that.
Right.
And of course, you should quarterly or, annually go through that and make sure everything is still current. But build out a training library so it's just easier. And I know we're getting off topic of client experience, but what that does is then for my designers who are like, I'm so busy, I can't even hire somebody. How would I hire somebody and train them right now? I'm so buried. Well, guess what? They can now go to the team training library and sit for an hour and look through all the team training videos. And they're in your studio. They're starting to get acclimated to your services and the way you do business. They're starting to understand your process, and you didn't have to do a thing. So, so that serves like so many purposes, right? And kind of gives you a little bit of a bubble when you are bringing someone new into your business when you're just slammed.
And what do you see? Are there challenges that stick out in your mind that are literally universal to both wedding planners and interior designers, other than at the beginning talking about that trust factor and making sure a client is willing to take that journey with you when it is so unknown at the other end of it. But in the process, in the back end, do you find that there's similarities there, Katie?
100%. And this is such a good question. I'm so glad you asked this. Like the whole time I was like 100%, 100%. Yes. So one is communication, 100% across the board. Communication, methods of communication with clients is, as you can imagine, just same as designers, my wedding planners are with their clients for a year, sometimes 2 years, and it's nonstop communication. So that is a universal issue, is how can your clients communicate with you? How can they not communicate with you? What are your hours of communication? When can they expect a response? So those are always like the first things I'm like, okay, set up an autoresponder, put your business hours in there and let them know I will respond in 1 business day, 2 business days, and I'm closed on the weekends or whatever it might be. The other piece is text messages. I actually have clients who are okay with text messages. And I personally am not. Like, even if I have a client who's like, can I call you? I'm like, let's schedule a Zoom meeting. Actually, I just learned, I don't know if you know this, you can set up your Zoom as a phone number. So when people call you, you give them your Zoom number and then it shows up on your phone as a Zoom call, which I didn't know that. But anyways, so text messages I would say are really, really difficult. And what I find though is that my designers and wedding planners like cringe because they're so disruptive and like invasive, right? You get that text on a Saturday morning when you're with your family and you're just like, really? But then they text back. So don't text back. If that's not how you can communicate, then email them on Monday morning and say, I got your text message over the weekend and I'm going to email you back so we don't lose any of your communication. It's really important that our whole team sees it, right? And again, like just redirect. So communication is number 1. Contracts are number 2, is like willy-nilly contracts that don't have any terms in them. And so I'm not an attorney, but if you're familiar at all with wedding planners, and I was a wedding planner, like I said, for 7 years prior to doing this, a big part of what we do is contract negotiation. So we read through contracts and negotiate them. And so for me, I actually really enjoy reading them because I look at it like, this isn't just a bunch of legalese. This is like something that's really structured and interesting. Like we get to see, what do we get? What do we not get? So a big piece of what I do is I'll go through the contract and be like, okay, wait, is this an issue for you? Okay, why don't you have anything in your contract about how clients can communicate with you? Well, let's put it in there. I have one client who has it in her contract 3 times. We do not text. And she's like, and most people don't, but she said, but sometimes they still do. But she has them initial at each line. Like we do not communicate by text message. So definitely contracts, again, like reviewing it and making sure if you have a term or something, like I just say, what are your biggest issues? Like, what are your hot points? What drives you crazy? Okay, let's put it in your contract. And then let's take it to your attorney and have them review it so we can make sure that how we've worded it is going to be like legal and is still going to protect you. But like, that's what it's for. It's to protect you, and right back to that client experience, to let your clients know how they can work with you so that they're not the bad guy, right? So they know, oh, we can't text them. And oh, she's closed on the weekends. And oh, the design turnaround is usually, 6 weeks or whatever. So it's just all in there. So that's what I find is that those contracts are really generic. And I honestly would say with my designers, we're updating their contracts frequently based on things that are happening with their firms, right? Problems they're seeing or delays they're seeing. And even with COVID, I mean, I'm assuming a lot of designers have made updates to their contract, not even just for like the force majeure, but like just for like, we're like I have one wedding planner, and what she did is so smart. I like love it so much. She has an official planning pause. And what she does is she says, for this many months, we are on a pause, because if you book me 2 years out, you don't get me every day for 2 years, and she says, this is a strategic pause. And this is because we need to like take a break. And by this point, we'll have everything done, everything squared away. And then we'll pick back up this many months out from your wedding. And I am so obsessed with that I've like incorporated it into my designers' businesses, because I'm like, hello, everybody, we need to send out, we're on a pause.
Right.
Hey, your contract ended, but because of, COVID delays, we obviously have not been able to install. So we just wanted to let you know, we're keeping an eye on your orders. We're watching them. We're going to update you. And we're obviously like done with our contract term, but we're still here. And we will let you know when we're ready to schedule your install. So it's kind of.
But I'm not at your beck and call through this, because I thought I would be at your beck and call for 8 months, not 28 months.
100%. Yeah. And that, again, it just gives such a, like, okay, so I can't call them and be like, oh, well, while I was looking at my mud room, I noticed the powder room could use some new paint. It's like, no. And that's just so easy, right? It's like, no.
Well, so, and I love it from your standpoint of wedding planners, because for us, that middle phase, outside of COVID, where we've got the delays, but for us, that middle phase is, the procuring and the ordering and the statusing. But for a wedding planner, I would think that middle phase is a lot of actually just waiting. Like, they have so much they have to do in the beginning to make sure they get the right band, the right food, the right dress, all the things. But once you've got all that, you're not necessarily taking delivery of those things for another year or two down the road. And that's so smart to be. You don't get to call me every single day, bride, to just chit chat about should you change the color of your shoes for the 15th time, right?
Absolutely. Well, and even with that, there's so much like family drama that comes up with the wedding, right? So, but I think, and even like, with my wedding planner that did this, she also has, of course, experienced just massive amounts of communication. So she's wanting to have a designated day of the week that she responds to emails. And I'm like, that's perfect. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. This is your business. Like, you're busy and you're working reverse hours of normal people. So like, you can't be available Monday through Friday in your inbox. You just can't. And that's like, I always tell my clients, like, if you're overwhelmed, here's like the best thing you can do is, one, like set a minimum for your projects, of course, but then 2, set days that you'll actually communicate with clients. Like, block 2 mornings or 2 afternoons where you're on calls or doing, things that are putting you kind of like client facing like that. So you can still have your big long days to do your design work. You can have your day to do your, site visits or whatever, but like, limit the ways that your clients can come at you, because we all know it'll be just a 10-minute call. No, it won't.
No. Right.
No, well, because you've got me on the phone and you want all my ideas.
Right. It's funny. I wonder, do you know Lauren Ashley from LA Design Affair? Have you ever met Lauren?
I have not, but what's so interesting is that's my sister's name. And I'm like, wait, what? Of
Oh,
course I
that's
know
so
Lauren Ashley, but not
funny.
Lauren Ashley Design. No.
Okay, so Lauren Ashley, she's a sweetie of a lady. I've met her a couple of times. She's been on a panel with me before, and she is actually a wedding planner and an interior designer. She does both.
Interesting. Okay.
You have to follow.
I've seen a couple. And here's what I think is so interesting is to me they're so similar. And I've had some people be like, how are those the same? I was like, they're the exact same. Like
Yeah.
it's a long process. You're designing something based on a vision that someone has in their head. You're interpreting it for them. And then
Yes.
you're doing all the middle stuff to bring it to
Yes.
life on their big like install/wedding day.
Right.
So, okay. So Lauren Ashley, she does weddings and interior design.
Yes, and she's on Instagram at LA Design Affair.
Okay. I'll have
Yes,
to check her out.
yes, and it's fun to follow her Instagram and see the different projects that she does. And she's a smart lady, she's a nice lady.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, very cool, very cool. Well, Katie, it's a lot, and I think the biggest takeaway that I have so far, in thinking about is the client experience is everything you do, not just the thank you note, right? Like so often we throw the word client experience around when we're talking about the subtleties and the niceness and the pretty that we bring to the relationship. But a really terrific client experience is one where the process feels organized and systemized, and the client understands their role in it and can know what's coming next and can see what it is that you're doing on their behalf the whole time. And that whole thing instills the confidence in them that when they get to the end that they're going to like it, instead of fearing it and having anxiety throughout the process that what if this doesn't turn out right.
Yeah, yeah, you said that so perfectly. That's exactly, yeah, it's not just the pretty stuff, right? Because we all know that that's not the design process. It's not it's not all pretty. It's very, very messy, and it is disorganized even if you have a clear-cut process because you're managing 150 million different vendors and trades and subs. Like there's so much that goes into it. So yeah, as much as you can create an experience for your clients that seems and feels very streamlined, and hey, it's going to be messy, but I'm one step ahead. I'm
Right.
already going to let you know it's going to be quiet for a little while, or it's not going to be quiet. We're going to be in your house. It's going to be messy. It's going to be dusty, but here's what you can expect.
Right,
So
right,
again,
right,
they
right.
just know. And then at every turn, they're not coming into your design presentation like chewing their nails because like, great, what's this going to be like? They're like, whatever she says, we're going to do it because everything has been amazing so far.
Right.
And I just see that just it just changes and it helps the business in so many different ways.
It's funny because maybe you know what the app is called, but Diana just mentioned to me that there is an app that you use for newborns and kids, and it's like something week by week, or I don't know. Do you know what that app is?
Yeah, like where you can see how, yes, like
Yeah.
there are milestones and things like that. Yeah,
Yes.
yep.
And it was so funny because she was just saying that when her toddler Lincoln will be going through maybe a fussy phase, and or all of a sudden he's just acting completely different. She said, LuAnn, you look at that app and it's like at week, I don't know. I don't know how many weeks. So there's 52 weeks in a year. So week 78 to 82, this is what's happening with a toddler. And she's like, I'm telling you, if it isn't dead on every time. And she said, and it just sort of takes away the anxiety of, oh, did my little, baby boy who was a perfect toddler just turn into Godzilla? It's like, no, right now, this is what's happening in his body, in his mind, in his physiology. And it lasts for 2 days or 2 weeks or
Yep.
3 weeks. and
And
it's so funny because my daughter has mentioned the same app, that it just takes that angst out. And when you talk about, hey, this is when your house is going to be messy, or hey, this is when we're going to be quiet, you're not like, I haven't heard from my designer. It's like, no, she told me it would be quiet during this
Yep.
period.
Yep. And yeah, and like even for Diana, like when she sees that her son is being or like very naughty or out of control or whatever, she might normally call her pediatrician and be like, something's wrong.
Right.
But guess what? She didn't, because she knew by looking
Right.
at that app that like this is totally normal.
Right.
And so that's one of the first things my clients will say is like, there's just like less emails. And I had one client who was like, it just feels like are we not busy right now? Because it feels like really, it feels just too easy. I'm like,
We're
no,
not
like
fighting
we're like,
fires, right? We're
yeah,
not
like
fighting fires.
like when you look at the pipeline, you're slammed. It's just because you're not getting all those emails that are like, when's this happening? When's it happening? Because we told them already. Like they
Right.
already knew that back at presentation day that this is what happens next and this is how long it's going to be. So yeah, it just, again, like it just cuts down on those questions and those emails. And obviously some clients are just going to be, they're going to be super users, and you're going to have to account for that somehow. But even still, like that's where that contract comes in. You get to add a nice little term in there for them. If you're like, this client is going to need a lot of reselections, let's be sure to include that and put parameters on it so we're protected.
I love it. I love it. So good. What a nice business you have. Interesting business model. Very cool. Love it a lot.
Thanks, LuAnn.
Yeah, yeah. So you get a smart lady, Katie.
Oh my gosh. I was like, oh my gosh, if I get one of those, or if I don't, I won't put too much weight on it, of course. But I'm like, yay, this is so exciting.
You're funny. That's awesome. Well, I have to say, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a pleasure to get to know you and learn about this business model of yours. So good. Thanks, Katie.
All right. Thanks, LuAnn.
I just love this conversation with Katie today. So often we can get caught up in the pretty little things that we do to make our clients love us, right? The thank you notes, the gifts, the special touches. Now, don't get me wrong. These things are great, right? They're important. They're part of that building that relationship with our clients, but they are just the icing. We could do all of these things every single time, but if we aren't providing trust and security for our clients throughout the process, then it's not going to matter. I can tell you this, our clients would rather feel safe with us every step of the way than feel like they're king or queen for a day. They would rather understand what to expect and to be confident that their investment with us is sound, that they have chosen you as the right designer, and that you will help them through every bump and hiccup along the way until they have the home they dreamed about, right? And the way you do this, well, it's all about those streamlined systems and processes. I know you've heard me talk about it over and over again. The importance of processes, the importance of systems, and the value they bring to your business. But what Katie is saying is that those things aren't separate from the client experience. They are fully ingrained. The client experience is everything that you do, from the moment your clients first make contact with you until the final follow-up, right? And one of the big takeaways for me is that so much of the client experience comes from the expectations that we lay out, right? When you have the systems and processes in place and you know exactly what to say and how to build your clients through them, right? And then they in turn know what to expect, how to interact with you, and how you're going to interact back, then everything is different. You've given the client what they need to know in order to trust the process and to trust you, right? Trust us. And everything that comes their way now, they're expecting. They're not afraid of it. They know that you're prepared to handle it, and they feel safe in your hands. There's the power, right? There's power in that. And it reminded me of Joanne Kandrek and Kelly Cole of Kandrek and Cole. Please check the show notes for this podcast episode. In this episode, Joanne and Kelly explained the detailed processes that they have put in place in their business. They bring to every consultation a binder that they have created of the entire client process, using as an example of a past client to show what every step of the process is going to look like. This was such a brilliant idea, and what a way to look professional and manage the expectations right from the very beginning, right? But what if you don't have all of this done, right? What if, though, you had somebody working on your business for you, creating the emails, the documents, the processes, the templates, the contracts, somebody that literally handed you everything you needed so that you could do the exact same thing for your clients time and time again? right? This is what Katie does. And it's probably something worth considering if you're overwhelmed. Everything in our business takes time. And you know logically in your mind, if you could take the time to sit and create these things, then you would buy back hours of wasted time with back and forth, answering questions you've already answered, alleviating concerns you could have already have addressed, right? But knowing that and actually being able to do it are two different things. Most of us are drowning in the work we already have. It's hard to put aside the time in a day when you just don't feel like you have it. This is where Katie comes in. She handles those things for you so that you can get back to doing what you're good at and living in your zone of genius, right? This is what I love. I want us all to be living in our superpowers, right? And another little nuance that I don't want to gloss over here is the point that Katie made about the investment in these processes and the ROI. When your client understands from the get-go what you are putting in and the value that you're bringing to the table with this fully developed, proven process, then it makes it much easier to charge your worth, okay? Now, there are many of you who are on the cusp of raising your rates and wondering just how you can bump to that next level. Finding the confidence to charge your worth is much easier when both you and your client understand that you're not just picking out pretty things. You are creating a space that will shape their life. And when you can communicate that, then charging your worth comes easily. And that's what Katie's talking about here. So if what Katie said resonated with you and you want to get in touch with her, you can find her at DakotaDesignCompany.com. She even created something special just for you, a client experience blueprint that you can use to start creating that unforgettable experience right away. You can download this at DakotaDesignCompany.com/LuAnn. LuAnn, DakotaDesignCompany.com/LuAnn. Now, speaking of streamlining your processes, I have to remind you that Sarah Brennan is back for the summer semester of LuAnn University, right? 2021, we're talking. Her class teaches you how to do this for yourself. So you can reach out to Katie, hire her to do it for you, or if you want to, you can attend Sarah's class at LuAnn University, because Sarah is going to help you take your steps and teach you how to put them into a proven process that yields dramatic results, okay? Literally more than 100 of your colleagues have taken her class so far through Lu University in the last year and a half, and each one has testified to the impact it has had on their business, their client relationships, and their profit margins, okay? So we are starting the week of July 5th, 2021. Grab your seat now at LuAnnUniversity.com. All right, so two options for you: done for you and come do it yourself. Right? So much of life is exactly that, right? What do I want to do? So I love that you have two great options that this summer you can make the change in your business if what you need is those proven processes and systems. All right, so thank you so much again to Katie for sharing these powerful insights and for just being an overall #smart lady. I hope you go download her client experience blueprint, and I hope it helps you in your business today. And I hope that you decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.